Welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast with big new ideas about credit unions and conversations about innovative technology with credit union and fintech leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Quillo, the real-time loan syndication network for credit unions, and by your host, longtime credit union and financial technology journalist Robert McGarvey. And now, the CU 2.0 podcast with Robert McGarvey.
Meet Storyfi, the new CUSO of the year for 2026. When I saw the press release that announced this, I had to get Nick Olexa, CEO of Storyfi, a Michigan-based CUSO owned by 6 Michigan credit unions, on this show. He's on it now. What Storyfi is doing is important. It's harnessing video to help credit unions tell their stories, and it's working within credit union budgets. That matters because nowadays, video is the globe's communication tool of choice. Whether it's a 7-second video on Facebook or a 3-hour video on Netflix, video genuinely is how the world tells and communicates its stories. Frankly, credit unions have been lagging at this. An upshot is that in the main, credit union marketing has been blah. Storyfi's purpose is to reverse that reality, to really get credit union stories told well. Understand, every credit union has a story, so does every CUSO. Most of the stories revolve around solving problems and often working through adversities. These are good, compelling human stories, and in video, they can shine. Since its 2023 founding, Storyfi has worked with around 140 organizations to tell their stories. On the show, Olexa tells Storyfi's origin story, the kinds of videos it creates for customers, and why all this really matters in thinking of the credit union future. Listen up. So, Storyfi.
Yeah.
When did you create Storyfi?
So Storyfi came about in early 2023, officially. We were talking about it well before that as an idea, but I think official articles of incorporation was early 2023, and I was hired April 1st, 2023.
Who created Storyfi?
So that's a good question. So Storyfi, at least part of it, originated out of the Michigan Credit Union League and their CUSO subsidiary, CU Solutions Group, or CUSG as they're known today. For many years, we produced media internally for that family of organizations. And then somewhere in the 20-teens, we pivoted that business unit, one of my business units, to support credit unions in the state of Michigan with their media needs. Obviously, the COVID landscape was very different for us, but we innovated throughout that to keep the team employed and, address the challenges that COVID brought. And then coming out of the pandemic, 2022-ish, we started talking about what's next. And what's next involved conversations with 6 credit unions in the state of Michigan, who we had previously had as clients of ours at CU Solutions Group. They were interested in putting together a marketing CUSO. So, talk about Kismet. It was, we're talking now about the future of this video business unit and a consortium of 6 credit unions that was looking to start a marketing CUSO. So it was, one part myself and my business partner, Aaron, and one part credit unions, and then another part, I would say, star alignment coming together.
How small is your smallest credit union owner? How big is the biggest credit union owner in terms of assets?
So we have 6, and the 6 are roughly either approaching at or exceeding $1 billion in assets. So I think our smallest one right now is $700 million in assets.
But so you don't have any of the big bruisers on the block.
I think our biggest one is Community Choice. And if I recall correctly, they are approaching $2 billion.
See, my first real question was going to be, but you've already answered it. Why the heck is this a CUSO?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because usually this would be 2 guys with a few bucks throw a shingle up saying, hey, we're going to make video content for credit unions. And you take off from there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a good question. It is a valid question. And, my mentality is pretty much anything can be a CUSO, but, the other half of that is, are you bringing value back to the movement, to the industry? Are you designing your products at a price point and in a way that actually brings value back to who you're serving? There's a lot of elements to what we do that's industry agnostic. And to that end, we do work with organizations outside of the credit union movement. By and large, we work with credit unions, CUSOs, other service providers that serve the financial services industry, and they make up about 95% of our clientele.
Aside from the six owners, how many other credit unions, CUSOs, and things that have something to do with the credit union world do you serve?
So in 3 years, we've worked with 140 clients, and then of those 140, 95%, give or take, are in the financial services industry.
Are they all in Michigan?
No, we work with credit unions, CUSOs, service providers nationally. We work with some pretty big guys and some pretty small guys. So we like to think that we have a solution and products for every price point and every asset size, which I think is so important. And a lot of that also came out of, we were born originally at the Michigan Credit Union League and then transitioned over to their for-profit CUSO CU Solutions Group. We needed to have a price point that served every bit of the market. And that's just something that has carried through now into Storyfi.
How big is your biggest credit union customer?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we work with a handful of credit unions that are multi-billion. And then on the small end, we work with some sub $100 million credit unions, and then everything in between.
Most credit unions that I'm aware of,
Mm-hmm.
thank God they don't know where I live, although they probably could find out from Google Gemini, do what I call horrible marketing. And I'm being kind.
Yeah.
And if they do marketing, it's old-fashioned legacy marketing. Basically, let's put this on, we'll put a page up on the web or something like that. And it's obvious we're in a post-literate society. It's obvious, too, that people will spend 8 hours a day looking at TikTok videos. They will not spend 8 hours a day reading James Joyce. Perhaps they should, but they won't. They'll watch the videos.
Yeah.
And so the credit unions just have, the ones that I'm aware of have resisted that realization that video is the place to be.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. And I mean, the reason that Storyfi exists is that we determined that was the biggest hole for credit unions of all sizes. So even at the billion plus asset size, you'll find some pretty lean marketing teams and ones that are either overly reliant outside resources, which is usually an agency of record relationship that in and of itself likely doesn't have in-house video services. So they're further contracting that out at a markup, or they're stressing their internal team, someone that's wearing 5, 6, 7 different hats, also saying, hey, can you go produce us a video? So as a video first or a video centric marketing agency, that's what we really want to solve for them. And, we have the technology and we have the people to do that.
Where does the video live?
Well, another good question. And that's something that we always start the conversation around. What are you looking to accomplish? What is the ultimate goal here? Is it to create general awareness of your brand or a new branch? Is it to drive traffic to a product or service? And ultimately, the responses to those questions set in motion a strategy. And that strategy says, well, hey, the best execution for this video is it's going to live on these 2 or 3 social channels, or it's going to have, a campaign, a marketing or media flight behind it to really get to that audience that they're trying to reach.
Yeah, I cut the cable cord a few years ago. But as I remember, I saw so many ads, quite nice ads actually, for Chase, Capital One, et cetera, et cetera. I knew their marketing message absolutely by heart. If you'd said, so what credit union? I said, I'm pretty sure I saw a Navy Federal ad once or twice. I'm pretty sure, but I don't remember it. Whereas Chase, I remember, because I saw Chase constantly. I watched a lot of news programming. So, and banks like to buy ads on news programs. It's, but no credit union, I don't think, has the budget to compete with a Chase in terms of buying TV time.
No, I mean that ultimately gets into the world of cooperative advertising, which we have a very deep experience with in the state of Michigan, as we, for many years, have managed on behalf of the Michigan Credit Union League their cooperative advertising campaign in the state of Michigan. So all credit unions in the state, they pay into that campaign to fund both the production and the media flight that gets associated with it, or the media buy that comes with it. And we have run that as a traditional campaign in usually 2 year cycles. A theme would carry for 2 years before being refreshed. This year, we've pivoted hard into kind of a micro influencer campaign, which is new for, or I guess, a new direction for the Michigan Credit Union League, but ultimately really leaning into that hyper community aspect of what credit unions do. And so far, we're seeing some pretty tremendous results from that. But, to a larger point, what you've mentioned here, you know, several years back, CUNA did their Open Your Eyes campaign, which
Oh,
became.
don't even mention that to me, please. Uh, I mean, don't even mention it. This was a horrible embarrassment to all.
Yeah. Too many cooks, among other issues there.
So, as one very senior credit union executive said to me at the time, so what? We're telling the American people you're blind and stupid.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, pretty much that's the message there. Open your eyes, you dumbo.
Yeah,
Uh, I
certainly.
think he even threw some money into it because he felt coerced, but he was not enthusiastic about this, and he wasn't expecting a lot of outcome.
Yeah, I
So,
would say more so the idea behind the concept, a national campaign to bring awareness to credit unions. I don't hate that idea, but I,
that's a fine idea. This just
yeah,
wasn't executing it, I don't think.
yeah.
Uh,
And that's exactly why we, saw kind of it fizzle out after a relatively short period.
is there any other CUSO that's doing something similar to what you're doing?
There is another video QSO here in the state of Michigan. They're relatively new. I think they're about 1 year old, but they exist primarily to serve a client of one. They're a wholly owned entity of Lake Trust, and they they ultimately produce content for Lake Trust. We conversely, we work with anyone and everyone that wants to really solve an issue, and that's really how we have such a diverse portfolio, is because we're constantly solving similar but different issues for different clients.
How big is your staff?
So we have nine
Doesn't
full-time.
necessarily have
Yeah.
to be employees. It can be and this your world often has a lot of contractors.
Yes, absolutely correct. We have nine full-time employees, including myself. And then we have a very, very extensive list of, as you said, freelancers and contractors that we scale up as a project dictates and or as a specialist is required. So in general, we can handle pretty much any media request, any media development in-house. But there are often times when, we're managing multiple projects and we just need an extra set of hands or eyes, or, since we do work nationally, having people in different pockets throughout the country has been helpful as well.
Does the nature of the output change regionally? If 40 years ago, I'd say it would have changed, certainly in terms of accent. That's less and less important, I think, at
Mhm.
this juncture in our history. Is there any other change?
I think the seasonality is one, and then how you talk to your particular communities too, that remains very important. And there is distinction there. So how you might talk to, a Michigan community is not how you're going to talk to a community in one of the Dakotas, right? And we've seen that just kind of in the execution of work as well. And we're super cognizant of that when we get plugged in with a client that is outside of where we're based at. But by and large, the accents, the regional dialects, those things have, for the most part, gone away.
Well, Michigan also, I'm talking in total ignorance, and you may point that out to me, is a state of two places. There's urban Michigan,
Hmm.
and then there's not urban Michigan, and they're really pretty different places, I think.
Very different. And, sitting on ultimately the steering committee for that cooperative advertising campaign, we had voices from around the entire state. And, the Upper Peninsula voices, the opinions they brought were different
Hey,
from
they're Canadians. Come on.
yeah, honorary Canadians. No, I think more so they're honorary Wisconsinites in that regard because they're all supporting the Green Bay Packers up there. But anecdotally, we have done extensive travel up to the UP for many years, and the expectations, but also the camaraderie, I think is different. There's I think a larger competitive nature to things in the Lower Peninsula. In the Upper Peninsula, it's a lot more cooperative, a lot more collaborative, and we really enjoy that. So while you might be competing with the credit union down the street, you're not necessarily trying to harbor secrets that give you that competitive edge, right? They truly feel like they're in it together.
Well, the old credit union mantra used to be, we don't compete with other credit unions, which is
Hmm.
hooey. It's absolutely nonsensical. Of course you do. Uh, but their prime enemy, I think, at this point is the big banks. That's
Yeah.
that's that's the existential crisis they're facing.
I mean, those are the ones always coming after the tax exempt status.
Now, the big banks don't give a hoot about that, man. It's the community banks. Jamie Dimon doesn't give a damn about the credit union tax exemption. It's
Well, that is true. That is true.
Now, will he come out and say what that? No, because that annoyed many people in his industry. But he's not going to raise his hand saying, "I'm all in on this. Here's $10 million for a campaign." Nah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's the community banks who have conniptions about this.
That's true. And I think from their perspective, they see it as a crisis because, there are some credit unions out there buying community banks.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, community banks are also in more existential peril than credit unions are.
Correct. Absolutely.
And they're not crazy to think that. Now, what's a typical product that you create for a credit union? I know there's going to be a diversity, but what's the most common request?
Historically, it's been a about us or a history of us video that lives on like a history of us credit or history of our credit union page on their website. That's something that is kind of like a basic entry point that we have worked with many credit unions on. We can go all the way up to commercial campaigns. As I said, we run the cooperative advertising campaign, which has a multi-channel, multi-deliverable campaign. But one of the things we really like is kind of more of the documentary storytelling. As the business unit in 2017, around or about, we produced a nationwide documentary called Just Getting By. These were vignette stories of people across the country that were in different financial peril situations. And then some of them, not all of them, had been helped by a credit union. Ultimately, what we did is we tried to construct an overall narrative through both the vignettes and the larger feature-length documentary that credit unions were the white hat financial providers and could put you on a better path. They couldn't solve everything, but by being aligned with one, could put you on a road to recovery in a sense.
And that's pretty much true.
By and large, that's what we have seen. Yes. Again, they're not going to be able to solve every financial woe, but certainly with the right guidance, with having better rates and less fees, you're not going to be taken advantage of in a situation where another financial provider would ultimately do that. One of the earliest stories we did was a veteran who had come back from the service and he went to one of the, get a car now, no credit needed. And I think he was paying close to 30% on his car
Wow.
loan. His local credit union stepped in, was able to refinance that, bring it down from the stratosphere and ultimately put him on a better financial path. And that's an example of the stories we found over the course of, I think, a year and a half that we were sourcing those stories. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole layer to the financial system that is geared toward taking advantage of people that don't know better or, just of situations that are, not the greatest. Yeah.
I've mentioned this on the show before, but some years ago, a guy sent me a prospectus for a company that was aspired to be a national used car chain,
Hmm.
but not one that you would probably think of. There's some big ones now that don't aren't this one. And I read it and I said, this guy's not in the used car business. He's in the loan sharking business.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna touch this thing, man. And that's what they are. They're loan sharks. It's and they you miss a couple payments, they repo it, sell it to somebody else. Now, what's the typical price tag for a project of yours?
A lot depends. We work with such a range of clients and such a range of products. I didn't touch on some of the other stuff we do. We do a lot of internal training for teams. For example, right now, we are creating training and service module for a credit union. A large credit union uses AI avatars as the talent so that if their internal talent leaves the organization, then you're not left with a full library of content, focused in on one individual for that. And then in addition to that, we do a lot of production of event sort of videos. That's coverage for events, that's pre-produced content for events, recordings and live streams of annual meetings. We really run the gamut. Anything you can think of where you might hit a record button on a camera, we have done and will continue to do. I in general, I like to say the budgets range from $4,000 to $40,000, depending on what you're looking to do. But I say that, and we have also worked with a handful of small SSI's credit unions whose entire marketing budget might be $10,000 for the year. So we like to think that we have an offering for them as well. And we're always trying to find something that works for the credit union to back into a budget.
So, a typical question I ask is, what's the company's exit strategy? You don't have an exit strategy, I don't think. Do you?
As in trying to sell Storyfi?
Yeah.
No, I don't. There's a lot of fintechs out there, and that's the game plan. That's the strategy is to, build it as quickly as you can, turn around and sell it, and then let someone else kind of take it to the next level. Storyfi, it's primarily organic growth that we're looking to achieve. We want to grow Storyfi sustainably so that it's around for a long time and it's solving credit union problems for a long time. And I say credit union problems. We also serve CUSOs, we serve fintechs and other financial service providers. Cut our teeth in the B2B and B2B2C. So that is something that's very strong. We can go out there, we can talk with the CUSO and, help them with their positioning so that they can reach more credit unions. And then for credit unions, that's more direct to consumer, direct to membership. That's something that we're also very extensive, have a lot of experience in. So that's a long way to answer. I don't have an exit strategy. I want to continue growing the business, but also I'm building up a very strong team underneath me that, hopefully we can grow this organization and take it in different directions that we haven't even envisioned yet today.
Now, how do you keep up with the changes in technology and media? 10 years ago, I remember someone said to me, you should really explore doing a podcast. And I said,
Mhm.
hey, man, radio's dead. It's been dead for a long time. I have no interest. A few years later, I changed my mind. And now podcasts are huge. It's just,
Mhm.
and every once in a while, I scratch my head and say, but this is radio.
Yeah.
Radio's dead. And actual over the air radio is close to being dead at this point, unfortunately.
More so radio has evolved, like podcasting is the future of radio, at least in this
Yeah,
immediate moment.
yeah.
Um, and when you look at video has evolved. And what we've seen is kind of this democratization of the tools that are out there. That one of the best tools you could possibly have in terms of video is in your pocket. It's your smartphone. And we're seeing a lot of credit unions implement kind of a social media strategy that includes, producing daily content on their cell phones. And I think that's absolutely necessary as a complement to something that might be more polished or higher production value.
Take me through that because oftentimes I see stuff and I say, there's no story here, man. Why are you even doing it? And this is boring. Yeah, and the name of your company encapsulates this
Hmm.
Storyfi. So you're about
Yeah.
story.
Hmm.
And a photograph can have a story or it might
Hmm.
not. A video should have a story, I think, in most cases, but oftentimes they don't. They just seem like somebody pressed the record button and said, okay, I'll post this. So,
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of things out there that don't do anything for the credit union that I've seen. That said, we call it feeding the beast, right? And ultimately what you're doing is you're satiating the algorithms to keep your channels top of mind, right? And the only way you're going to do that is at minimum you're posting 2 days a week with some visual or media rich content. And that could be a photograph, that could be a video, and that's about it. Or, I guess an animation or a GIF could be, a substitute. But so there is an onus on the credit union to find a way to execute on that. And I've talked with a number of them and their marketing teams, and they always say, "Oh, I'm the social media person, I'm the photographer, I'm the videographer, and then they list 12 other jobs. So it's a very small fraction of what they're really focused on. They get through their tasks and then they think, "Oh man, now I have to go figure out a video," right? In that way, the credit union isn't necessarily prioritizing it or investing in it, but they know it's important because they have to remain relevant and top of mind for the consumer, would-be members that probably aren't part of the system yet.
How does AI figure into what you're doing? Where, you go back 10 years ago, everybody was babbling about SEO, search engine
Yeah.
optimization. Now it's GEO, generative engine optimization, i.e., AI.
Hmm.
And I know for this podcast, more and more frequently, the downloads will just skyrocket. It just goes ballistic.
Hmm.
And I'm not egotistical enough to say, "Oh my God, I think I've just caught on. Everybody in Michigan wants to hear this." No, I'm pretty sure it's either Chat GPT, OpenAI, or Google that's swallowing everything. Maybe I'm deluded. Maybe I am really popular, but now that wouldn't be where my bet would be. Do you see AI engines devouring your stuff?
I mean, we've certainly speculated around that quite a bit. We have pretty frequent internal discussions with our team. And actually, very early on, about a year and a half ago, we established AI guidelines, which was really a set of ethics for Storyfi in how we utilize and deploy AI, in ways that we can live with, right? And they're not undermining talent, they're not undermining the ability to create unique content while still fulfilling what the credit union is ultimately looking for. That said, we employ a fair amount of AI tools in our editing software. One example I always point to is in the past, right? You go out and you record video that comes with audio, and you would likely have to take that audio that you would capture and take it to an audio engineer or an audio master if that spot, the eventual spot, was going to be pushed through a broadcast station. You wanted the audio to be as crisp and clean and mixed as well as it could be. Now, with the use of AI tools that are built right into the editor or as an add-on, we can get close, if not exceeding that same quality with the audio engineer. And in doing so, we're able to pass those savings on to the client. And we can do that in a number of different ways. Audio is one of them. Any way that you might augment or touch up a video, all the way up to, deleting something that shouldn't be in the background. Those are all AI tools that in the past required a human touch to fix. So on one hand, we're deploying it, in our day to day. On the other hand, as I mentioned earlier on this call, we're building AI avatars for a training program, and that is to solve what ultimately could be a problem if their primary, HR individual who leads the training leaves the organization. They didn't want to have to go back and re-record at cost, all of these different training modules. Could it replace what we do ultimately altogether? I would say down the line, yeah, probably. But what it lacks is it lacks the human ingenuity, because ultimately what are AI models? They're trained on all the creative that has been created to date, right? And probably a lot of that is copyrighted, so it might not fully be in the clear. Humans will always have a capacity to be creative, to apply ingenuity, and to ultimately create something very tailored, AI would only be able to replicate after it was trained on that creative or that model. So I always think there will be a place for what we do. The makeup of our team might look different, the makeup of our company might look different, but I think what we do is absolutely necessary. And when you come back to it, we're trying to tell the credit union story. In all the different products and services that we offer, at the root of it, we're trying to get across why credit unions exist, why they're different and better, and why you should be the member of a credit union. And, AI could probably do that, but, we really enjoy doing it and we really enjoy collaborating. And that's just not something you get with a AI model or system.
Yeah, the other side of the coin that also interests me is AI incorporating some of your stuff in a way that might benefit the credit union in its LLMs.
Mhm.
So, in other words, are you teaching AI some facts about credit unions that are interesting?
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, we kind of employ several different AI models specific to our company, and we've kind of created a baseline database of our knowledge base that we use for our team members so that we have a consistent understanding across all team members when we go for an engagement. It doesn't mean that the AI is doing all the creative aspects, but it helps us create a framework that that prevents us from having to retread an area that we've already gone through and experienced and had learnings from.
Now, have you looked up Storyfi in ChatGPT or Gemini?
I have, but not recently. Hopefully,
Oh, you should. You should. It's quite interesting. I looked it up just today. I think it's more or less accurate.
well, I'll take a look. Thank you.
Well, remember, search, the old Google search, and I used to be really, really good at Google search,
Mhm.
is now dead. It's a skill that no longer has purpose.
Yeah,
It's a Gemini can do anything I can do in search, about 100 times faster.
yeah.
It's,
I don't remember where I heard it, but it was like, a mock conversation between a kid and a parent. And it's like, what do you mean you would search for a term and then it would return several thousand results and then you had to click through every page to find what you were looking for. And then, in that context, when you think about it, you're like, man, it does sound like the dinosaurs. Certainly, the ubiquity of AI and the value of AI allowing us to cut through that to really get to an answer, I think makes a lot of sense.
I'm an old guy. I actually used to be good at Boolean search,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
which Google basically discontinued, stressing that you should use that probably about 20 years ago. It's a very long time ago.
I remember that as well, though.
But yeah, I do see AI changing things. I don't necessarily see it changing what you're doing because end of the day, it's the ability to tell a story. And will
Mhm.
AI ever get to the point where it can do good storytelling? I'm sure it will,
Yeah,
but it's not going to happen this year, next year, probably not even 5 years from now.
exactly. I think we have some runway left in terms of being able to do what we do in the way we're doing it today without, AI taking over. That said, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this term, AI slop. There's a lot of crappy AI videos out there.
Yeah,
And
might I point out to you that there's more human slop,
well,
just
that's
for the
true.
just for the record. I
Maybe
always
the
hear,
AI slop is just trained on the human slop,
yeah, I always hear that. Now, I've seen horrible mistakes made by AI. I've seen,
Mhm.
but anytime someone points that out to me, and I say, you probably made more mistakes yesterday than I.
Yeah.
So,
In general, though, I think if a credit union is choosing to use AI video tools to create content and they produce something that amounts to AI slop, what does that do? It diminishes the
oh,
brand. It diminishes
absolutely.
the perception of the brand. So, you know, a company like Storyfi, we like to be stewards of technology, but also the process that is storytelling. And, we'll combine them in such a way that ultimately gets your message and story across in a way that doesn't look or feel or come across as AI slop, right? That's far from what our goal is. And in doing so, we want to help elevate the perception of your credit union, your brand, your products and services, and ultimately connect it with the communities that you serve.
Well, you also get on a deep level the credit union ethos
Mm-hmm.
and what credit union people think distinguishes them from banks, which in many cases is actually true. And AI, well, it's going to take AI a bit of time to begin to truly master that on a human level
Yeah.
because we're not at the artificial and general intelligence stage of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's actually forecasting that'll be the case in the next 5 years. Beyond that, who knows? Now, have you ever been asked by a credit union to do a project and said, geez, that's a dumb idea? Or, no, we couldn't possibly do that.
No, I mean, we always start with anything as a possibility. What we find though is that we are approached by credit unions of all sizes. They say we have a mandate either from our board or our executive leadership team that we need more video. And then they say we don't know what that means or we don't know where to get started. So then we get into the discussion, well, what are you looking to accomplish? Are you looking to increase the awareness of your brand? Are you trying to increase the share of wallet, the adoption rate of products and services of the credit union, et cetera, et cetera? What are you ultimately looking to achieve? And then as we go through that discovery process, then we start to pick out things that we think might be a good opportunity. But because some of these credit unions haven't been through this process before, we get decision by committee. And what ultimately started as this radical, very cool idea, it gets watered down. And the end product isn't terrible, but it also isn't as powerful as it could be. And, for us as storytellers, that's a bit of a frustration point, but also, you're up against kind of the corporate nature of some of the credit unions we work with in trying to get that idea out the door.
Yeah, to me, the ultimate argument for video is you think back, you go back 50 years ago, you
Mhm.
went on a subway or a train or a bus. Everybody had a newspaper, often a tabloid, because it's a nice format in their hands, and that's what they're doing. Look at them today. Almost all of them have a cell phone in their hands.
Mhm.
And what they're doing is watching video.
Yeah.
They're not reading the New York Times online. They're really not.
Hmm.
They're watching video, often on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, and a very short form video,
Yeah.
90 seconds, 3 minutes, something like that. It's
5 to 7 seconds in some cases.
Yeah. Am I thrilled about that? No, I'm horrified about it. But on the other hand, I'm a realist. This
Yeah.
is this is what's going on. And I can't turn the clock back and say, really, you should read the New York Times. Everybody should.
Hmm. Yep.
I mean, I might say that, but no one's going to listen to me. They're too busy watching their videos.
And that comes back to exactly what I said, feeding the beast, right? The algorithms are such that they need content, new content every day, every hour of the day, every second of the day, so that if your brand, if your credit union is producing two to three things, right, then you're ultimately feeding the beast across social channels. So that's where a very strong social strategy comes into it, and it's likely a video-centric strategy.
Can you work out a package of 7-second videos for a credit union? Not
Absolutely.
just one, like I
Yep.
need 100 of them,
Yep.
something like that.
We have done that. I mean, not 100, but we have done packages of content that we produce over time. And one of the interesting things that we'll be bringing online later this year, if everything goes well, knock on wood, we're bringing a virtual production studio online in Michigan. I don't know how familiar you are with this technology, but the Disney shows, all the new Star Wars shows like The Mandalorian, these are all filmed on LED volume walls, which different from a green screen or a blue screen, you actually create the environment behind the talent of the spot. so that they can truly interact with it. So if there's a spaceship landing behind you, you can see exactly where that spaceship is, and you can react accordingly. And then you layer practical props in front of that screen to ultimately create more of a realistic environment. And then on that, you can create scenes, environments, and you can start filming things at scale. So you get people in front of that wall, you create what your different scenes are, you're in studio, a controlled environment, and you can start knocking out content, at scale. And that's ultimately what we hope to bring back to the credit unions. So we're hoping to be online August 1st of this year with that technology. And that truly will be the only of its kind supporting the credit union industry.
Now, why do you think, and this will be the last question, why do you think CUSO singled you out for an honor?
I think it comes back to what I said on the front end, right? What we do is agnostic to any industry, but are you designing the solutions that provide the value back to the industry? You go to every conference, every credit union conference, someone gets on stage and you know what they say? We're not telling our story. We need to be telling our story. And that Storyfi is the direct answer to that call, right? We were formed in 2023, and we have been answering that call for 3 years. And now we're bringing on additional tools and products and services that are going to further strengthen our ability to tell the credit union story. And I think that's really what they saw in us and in kind of in our roadmap, is that, we're backing up what we say, and we're continue to bring the value back to the credit union movement.
You're also using the media of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's so somebody like me would say, well, I'll help you write a corporate history. It'd be an interesting idea. I might
Yeah.
read it. Maybe a couple of board members would. No one else would. So, I mean, whereas the right video, you can get that in front of a bunch of people and they'll watch it, et cetera, et cetera. So what I find fascinating, I mean, the CUSO flavor of the month for some years now has been fintechs, which is a wonderful thing. It's really good that so many fintechs have migrated into the credit union land. It's enabled a billion-dollar credit union to compete on a technological level with a Capital One. Which is just staggering. I mean, it's just wonderful. But you're doing something entirely different, which is what caught my eye. I said, wow, I'm not aware of this. This is cool.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of fun doing what we do. And frankly, I've said this to many people before. I said, if it was any other industry, I probably would have left a long time ago. But credit unions, the credit union ethos of people helping people, it's resonated with me. And, frankly, I feel good about what we do and what we are accomplishing every day and how it ultimately strengthens credit unions and their ability to serve their membership. And, when a credit union is strong, that's the ultimate goal of Storyfi.
And to help credit unions compete against the Chases, et cetera, which are very good at using video tools to get their brand messaging across. They're staggeringly good.
I mean, who wouldn't want an unlimited marketing budget? I mean, as someone who has run marketing and communication departments, having an unlimited marketing budget, would be transformative, right? You could do just about anything with that. But in the credit union space, we ultimately have to find a way to act as we are cooperatives. We have to be collaborative. We have to cooperate. We have to pool resources where necessary. If it's a larger messaging initiative, and then apart from that, individual efforts, certainly, right? We have to be at the right price point to make sure that we can articulate what that credit union is looking to communicate.
Before we go, think hard about how you can help support this podcast so we can do more interviews with more thoughtful leaders in the credit union world. What we're trying to figure out here in these podcasts is what's next for credit unions. What can they do to really, really, really make a difference in the financial scene? Can't all be mega banks, can it? It's my hope it won't all be mega banks. It'll always be a place for credit unions. That's what we're discussing here. So figure out how you can help. Get in touch with me. This is rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Robert McGarvey, again, that's rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Get in touch. We'll figure out a way that you can help. We need your support. We want your support. We thank you for your support. The CU 2.0 podcast.